Hello, and welcome back to another week of the DP World Picks and Bets. Skylar, Hoke here. Tom Jacobs, how we doing?
Good, we're good. It's a big week on the other side of the pond, so we have to look a little bit deeper into the event this week. It's a tough one. It's got an interesting title and a golf course that I'm actually quite excited about, but haven't seen a whole lot about.
Yeah, it's going to be this stretch of golf. And arguably, I think the DP World Tour probably this year, as we've mentioned, man, bottom of these fields, as the top guys go and play these bigger events on the World Tour or on the PGA Tour. I mean, no different than players this week. I mean, it's getting thin, and it creates a lot of opportunity for golfers on the Sunshine Tour this week who've been doing well on the Challenge Tour, and just different golfers have just big chances to really solidify their tour status in the DP World Tour, and it makes for a lot of variance week in and week out.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is I think we sort of discussed something because like last year we had a bit of a European tour take on the Players Championship. This year we didn't because there wasn't so many guys in the field. You know, there wasn't the Victor Perez's and people like that played. But by the same token, they're not here either. Like it's just this real stretch of golf where we've got a couple of decent players. You know, Bernd Wiesberger is obviously the closest thing to an elite player that we've got. Obviously, a Ryder Cupper. Dean Burmester has been popular for a long, long time. But, other than that, it really is kind of Challenge Tour and Sunshine Tour regulars, which does, like you say, add in volatility and probably allow us to go a bit further down the board.
Yeah, completely agree. And you mentioned up top, for an event like this with a course that hasn't been seen outside of some amateur events in South Africa, potentially, I think it was either a Big Easy Tour event that might have been played here as well. But Pekin Wood Golf and Country Club is the name here. Based on what we see from a small sample size of results, looks like we're going to see bombs away. And we say that because a couple of the picks you mentioned have some history here who are really, really strong drivers of the golf ball. Not even accurate, it's just pure bombs, that they're hitting. So if you see that from multiple golfers down a list of a small event, it's enough to at least make a narrative for us to attack this week. So open fairways from everything that kind of, if you did a little flyover, you see there. So I'm going that angle and keep it informed from what we can see on any guys that continue to play well. Because the odds haven't slashed for everybody, despite some good finishes across the board.
Yeah, I think the biggest hazards this week are going to be some fairway bunkers are quite strategically placed. I think even some good drives can end up in there. I think there is some water on here that we need to just kind of look for, which does kind of rein people in a little bit. But I think generally speaking, from everything I've read, kind of just even from general public reviews, it's kind of been like it's a tough course. For maybe the higher handicaps, but generally speaking, if you're a good player, it's going to be low scoring. So, with that in mind, I've kind of just started my card at 40-1 upwards and kind of not gone to the top because I don't know that the best players will be rewarded.
Yeah, I don't even have much to say as we go through the top. I mean, I love what Oliver Becker's doing. 33-1 seems pretty low. Justin Harding, it was the one that gave me a little bit of hesitation. 35-1 because I feel like he is as good at times as Dean Burmester, if not better. But that, I mean, Maroc shot 100 on Saturday, so he literally, I think it was an 80, and then he shot like the round of the day the next day, which it's DP World Tour golf.
Yeah,
golf right there.
I think for me it was kind of like you got guys up there that all should be winning, right? We've got Adriano up there, we've got Jordan Smith up there, Oliver Becker, you've mentioned, has been playing very well. Moron's going to win at some point. Any one of those guys can win. We're not sitting here saying they can't. It's just, these guys can be this price on a golf course that's going to reward them, and an event that's going to reward them where they actually stand out. Whereas this one, I think, is maybe just go closer to home with some South Africans. That certainly dominates my card, and try and just take that.
Yeah, I feel you could go many routes with it. I don't mind because South Africa golf, I mean, it's like you see the Florida swing and you see the California swing on the PGA Tour. where they've been teeing it up early on in the year isn't necessarily exactly what you see here, especially once you get to kind of where you live in that neck of the woods. It's definitely way different than South Africa golf. So I don't mind going that route. It's not actually where I landed for a good amount of mine. I sprinkled actually in probably half of my card with some of those guys, but we're not really getting going till that mid 40s, and it's with the Tiger Woods of the Challenge Tour.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone with JC Ritchie, and I just remember that when I was at the Open Championship, I was kind of watching him, and I was kind of taken aback by how well he hit it off the tee. Like, I thought it was really impressive. Again, when you're a general public and you go around seeing any professional hit a ball off the tee, the danger is you think they're really good, and they're just not. That's just part of being a professional golfer, I guess. But it looked good, and then the numbers, he's been back-to-back top 4 in strokes going tee to green. He's been back-to-back top 3 in strokes going approach. He's won 2 of his last 4 events. Again, they're in weaker fields, but this is that. Apart from those few odd guys, and 8 wins at this level, Sunshine Tour and Challenge Tour since 2017. Like, that is, it's hard to avoid. Again, he's world number 147. It's not, it's not like he's an elite player by any means, but when it comes to this field, outside of the guys already mentioned, Wiesberger, Dietrich, etc., he's one that I think was actually a bit overlooked.
Yeah, I think he opened even at 60s, and that quickly got bet down. There's nothing to pick apart. I mean, that wins on the Challenge Tour are very equivalent to what's this type of field. So to get multiple of those and again play well the next week, I think if we looked at elite drivers in this range, Laurie Cantor is probably arguably the best one in the field. You get him at 45-1. Can he overcome a victory for the first time? I don't think those are bad odds for him. Matthew Pavon arguably has been maybe one of the best players, this season.
It was weird how much he's gone out in price, because we were talking about him last week or 2 weeks ago where he was 28-1, 33-1. Now he's 50.
Yeah.
That was quite eye-catching, but I just didn't get there.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument. Daniel Van Tonder is similar in the range to a JC Ritchie type. I keep going further and further. So even once we start the 60s, I mean, Lane Goske at 60-1 after he was 28 not that long ago. You're not going to be shocked when Ben Coley puts him up, because we need driving and approach. He still has been fine with that, even though he's missing cuts. Kutsia is one of the best South African golfers around. You get the random Ashton Wu win last week that happens once a year, it feels like. But your guy here at 60-1, I think definitely could be a standout if the course advantage continues. Yeah,
so Wilco Neuneber is a guy that how many times have we spoken about him? On the show, and he was on the PGA Tour feed because he hits it 400 yards and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know whether he was hitting it 400 yards when he was 17, but he won an amateur event here. He finished 3rd as an amateur here back in 2018. And I don't generally tend to get too involved with amateur form because, it's dangerous, and you always see guys that have won an amateur event at Torrey Pines, or they've won an amateur event at Riviera or something, and there's always those narratives. But this seems quite specific because the pros haven't been playing here. And I think, all of a sudden he's one of the guys out of maybe 100 that haven't ever played here, to my knowledge anyway. Maybe they do. But bombs away, 5th in approach last week, which is a great sign. And I just think that given the course, set up and his high upside, I thought he was decent price at kind of like 60-1.
Yeah, and I am going to take something with a grain of salt that you said. So we mentioned last week about strokes gain statistics from the Sunshine Tour starting to pop up. I dug into it a little bit today and seeing just discrepancies on numbers. It's probably like early DP World Tour, Euro Tour strokes gain that came out. So like I saw Steve Surrey, for example, gained 5.5 strokes off the tee last week in 2 rounds. Yeah. And he's a golfer who is not very long off the tee.
Does not do that.
So Yeah, so I think there's just some weird things that I'm seeing in the statistics.
And that was what I was worried about. That was what I was worried about last week, because we said about Russ McGowan, didn't we? And that was behind one of the picks. And
I think he finished dead last.
Yeah. So there is obviously that concern. I mean, we've got those numbers. I certainly believe that Nineover can do that. I mean, he's a good iron player when he's on form. So that was kind of, it wasn't the reason behind it. And again, like JC Ritchie as well, like he's winning. So we know he's obviously hitting the ball well. So they weren't the reasons, but they were just hopefully additions. And the 100%. Next guy that I've got up, and I'll go straight into him, this could change things if those figures are not right, is Daniel Gavins. You know, he was first tees green and first in approach last week. And
but I think those were DP World Tour numbers versus Sunshine numbers. So I think we can have more back, even though last week was probably back to the caddy car.
Yeah.
Because they didn't come out till at a round. You know, there wasn't shot link.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think also with Daniel Gavins as well, it's believable, right? Because he finished sixth. And I was sort of saying this to Bradley Todd earlier, we generally message on a Monday morning, and I don't think he's ever really been kind of, the improvement of Daniel Gavins has ever really been taken into account in the betting odds. I think he's always kind of been left behind for some reason or another. He's not a fashionable name. He's not a Laurie Cantor. He's not a Wilco Nineover, to be honest. I just thought he was deep. I mean, he was like 100 and something to 1 this morning. I mean, we got him 150 to 1 over here on Betfair. He's just hitting the ball well, and generally speaking, he does kind of pop up on these tees green numbers, and it's more approach than it is off the tee, which goes slightly against the narrative that we've kind of put in our own head. But I think he's a guy that, especially if he does find himself in those bunkers, and I think he can grind his way out as well. Yeah,
I mean, for a winner not that long ago, it is interesting to see where he ends up landing. I think, to me, the biggest misprice potentially in the field is if I'm saying pound for pound, who has been the best golfer since the 2 Rolex Series events, so the Ras Al Khaimah, both those events, Magic Kenya Open. It's hard not to say Hurley Long hasn't played the best of literally anybody. An 18th, a 3rd, and then a 2nd. And then I had to triple take the odds as I went down the board. I was like, okay, did he withdraw? Is he not teeing it up? What's going on? He's as long as 75 to 1 in the States here. He's as short as 33 to 1 on some books, which I think is much more reasonable.
More likely.
What is the difference in Oliver Becker and him right now? There's none, in my opinion. So to get double the price, again, we bet him last week. I was on, finishes top 5, and outside of Ashton Wu running away, I mean, great there. And probably should have been better. I mean, woke up Sunday morning, one back. Had a real shot at it, 75 to 1. So he feels off the top for me one of the biggest misprices. And I'm just going to live in this range. The next one, and again, small sample size statistics and not losing sight after a miscut. Doing that with Xander Lombard feels to be probably one of the moves you just eliminate a week. You just eliminate what happened last week. And you think about it, I mean, he was 3rd, I think, in back-to-back weeks. One of those being in South Africa on the Challenge Tour. And what he did really well last week, even so, was still drove it exceptional. And if I want a statistic to do well again this week, it is driving off the tee. I bet Lombard at 40 to 1 last week, and it didn't feel that bad. To go back to South Africa, odds now double after the best stat I'm looking at stayed consistent. He just wasn't good approach, terrible with the putter, lost like 3 or 4 strokes putting on one day. So you just kind of wash it away, tee it back up, double the odds. He is definitely my next selection.
Yeah, so for me, for going back to kind of Hurley Long for a little bit there, is that we were quite happy with his price last week. Obviously, you were on him. I think I put the moniker on you with him and Kinholt. I thought we were going to have a day, and they both kind of faltered from there. And someone actually told me I was a jinx, so that was good. He didn't actually pop up in the actual. You mentioned whether he'd withdrawn or not. He wasn't actually in the statistics that I was looking at earlier. His name wasn't even in the thing. So there was a worry that he wasn't actually going to play. I think he is, as far as we know. Back to Xander Lombard. He, like you say, he's just not a consistent guy. Generally speaking, he is a flash, and when he does it, he hits his driver and irons really well, and sometimes can't putt. Which is the type of guy that you want. You want a guy that's going to spike 1 week, and he can do it back in South Africa. We were in Kenya last week. We know that there's similarities, but actually back on home soil. Not sure if he can sleep in his own bed. That's obviously a narrative that always gets chucked around, but I think that'll benefit him.
Yeah, the interesting thing you mentioned about Hurley Long there is, like, I saw some sites not moving forward with his stats while other sites did. We're in the Wild West when you lead the PGA Tour sometimes on statistics. So he looked really good at tee to green from what we've seen. He has a really good short game, and he is decently long. I'm going to reference the statistic twice, but strokes gained tee to green, Matt, our friend that posts the strokes gained stats on the DP World Tour after every round. He had a tweet when Nikolai Højgaard won that first Ras Al Khaimah event about distance and about easy holes. Hurley Long was somebody who took advantage on some of those easier holes that distance-wise. And the next golfer, also I reference that too, was a golfer that I don't take as something that's somebody who's like long off the tee. I was actually genuinely surprised when I was digging into the numbers. But when they looked at drives, I think it was like over 340, and he had like 12 of them, which was inside the top 10. Christopher Broberg, he must have just revolutionized, not too much to say, must have just revamped potentially what he was off the tee. I mean, his distance has significantly improved this year, and he is probably the best iron player on the tour this season. So you add those, his short game has been putrid, but once again, his short game was unbelievable, for a good stretch. Maybe not a good stretch, maybe 1 week. Actually, now that I quickly pull it up, it might have been literally only the Dutch Open where he had a good week, and that was the best putting performance of all time, potentially. And either way, I thought a few things lined up that if we can find any relevance of a short game with what he continues to do, 100 to 1 just feels long from the best iron player on the DP World Tour right now.
I think with Broberg, it was the distance was actually there before as well. I think, but I think he had that such bad injury that it kind of got debilitated for a little bit, and he just basically couldn't complete swings. I think that it was kind of referenced that at his Dutch Open win that someone said that he literally just couldn't complete it, and it was so hard to watch. I can't remember who it was now, one of his friends on tour. So yeah, I think Christopher Broberg, I mean, we brought him up a few times when he was 300 to 1, 400 to 1 earlier in the year. It just seems so long on someone that is seemingly back. I know, everyone went straight to the world to back Haotong Li after a good performance, and Broberg's the same caliber, I would argue. It's the same sort of thing. So 100 to 1 in this field. I mean, again, like I say, probably way too many times, is that once we get into the triple digits, there's not really much convincing you need to do. And if anyone tries to tell me, I get it quite a lot. I go, what do you think of so-and-so at 180 to 1? And I'm like, if you like him, it's great. I said, well, what's the point of, you've got to chuck down coffee money to enjoy it. So, that was interesting. One of the guys around this kind of range that I didn't actually get to, just trying to remember what price he was now, but Frederick Lacroix.
Yes, he was so close for me.
He was in that amateur event I referenced earlier with Nine Neighbor, who finished third. Lacroix finished ninth, shot 64 there in round 3. I was going to say on the Saturday, but I don't know what days they play these events. But, we saw Jaden Scaper in that field. We saw Ludwig Agberg, who I know that you like. Callum Fife is a good player. He's got a lot of upside when he gets onto tour regularly. So it was a decent field. It was a good period of time for amateur golf. And I would probably think about him, especially if he got to, we get a bet for exchange over here. Maybe he gets a little bit longer. I'd do that. But otherwise, I just went for one big long shot artist.
Yeah, and he was top 10 in the Joburg Open, so a South Africa event to start the season. Of course, we were on him that week as well. So a little South Africa flair there too. I dug into those Broberg numbers quickly, and you're right. That week he won the Dutch Open was the second time that entire season he gained on the field in distance. And then every week from there on out, he has gained on the field every single week. And in those weeks, he had multiple additional top 12 finishes. So definitely some opportunity there if he can find a putter. Probably outside of Hurley Long, the second biggest conviction play that I have that I floored at the number. Truthfully, floored.
Yeah.
South Africa Golf, one of the better golfers in the Sunshine Tour over the last probably 3-4 years. The winner of that Joburg Open, and not even the winner, runaway in the 36 holes, could have came back to the field. Like I think he started to, right? When they did. But Thriston Lawrence at 110-1. I finished second last week. Maybe they're just not even thinking about what happened last week, and it's just like we're rolling the dice again. Because what I thought was extremely interesting is he stood out in the last Ras Al Khaimah event, being really well ball striking despite missing the cut. Gained 2.3 strokes per round in those 2 rounds. So then, I think he missed the cut maybe on the number because of his around the green game. And then that last week, he gained another 8 strokes ball striking on the field. T2 missed a little shorty on the last to be solo second. But he's found himself in contention now multiple times in his start on the European Tour. And he's been a winner in the past. So for me, 110-1 on a guy T2 last week who has connections in South Africa. And I just thought that was kind of a steal.
Yeah, so for me, it was one of those ones I kind of just talked myself out of it for absolutely no reason other than the fact that I kind of does that win that was first 6 holes and could have gone completely differently, impacting the way I thought about Thriston Lawrence. So this is a guy that actually, generally speaking, hasn't been historically, in contention very often. His first time he finished second was in 2016. He done it another time after that. But then 2018 he won, 2019 he won. He did win. In 2021, whatever way you want to put it. But they were like, it was Big Easy Tour, then it was the Sunshine Tour, and then it was European Tour, DP World Tour. And is it a development, or is it just lightning in a bottle? And I couldn't quite work out which one it was. I wondered whether that was why the number was being hung and I didn't want to fall for it. I will probably just tell you on it, because I think it's pointless trying to talk yourself. I've just said, what's the point in talking yourself out of a triple-digit number? So Thriston Lawrence would probably be someone I would go to. Yeah,
he just seems like the one. I had him circled. I was going to bet probably any number 50-1 or higher, so to get double. That felt like stealing to me. So I got 2 more long shots. It's an easy overview this week. I don't think you need to really get into the weeds all that much. I know you got 1 more. So I'll go first. I'll go 1, you go 1, and then I'll slam us on me. The first one for me is Lucas Nemec. Does that sound right? I don't know.
I think he used to be a footballer, right? I think this is true. He used to be a soccer player. I think. I mean.
Oh yeah, you are 100% right. He was like
I'm sure he was a soccer player, but he's not the one that I thought he was. So there was a guy that used to play for someone like Liverpool or someone like that, or quite a big team. Not him, but I'm pretty sure when I look back at it, he was not the guy I thought he was, but actually a soccer player. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
There really was, though, like a soccer. Like I know who you're talking about. I didn't realize Nemec, but he's 32 and has had a decent stretch, I would argue, over the last 3 weeks. Finishing third in that second Ras Al Khaimah, or the first event. And again, that course, especially that week, was literally all the best drivers in the field did well. So to see him up there, with Højgaard, with Smith, with Hautong, with Matthew Pavon, Dietrich, like all these guys we know are driving it well, that just, and his off the tee numbers that week were really, really strong too. I mean, if you go into, he gained over a stroke per round that week. The next week at Ras Al Khaimah, gained 0.75 strokes per round. Last week wasn't the best off the tee for him, but his approach game was lights out, gaining almost 10 strokes approach in those 4 rounds, or not 10, gaining about 8 strokes per round in those 4 rounds. So outside of Gavin's, he was clear second in that statistic. So 150-1 for a golfer that we're kind of leaning into some driving statistics being his strength. I just think there's enough in there that give a little sprinkle on that.
I think, the fact that all you've referenced is absolutely true. I completely made that up about our soccer. I was just checking out while you were talking about him. That is not true. So
but
disregard
there is a golfer who
Yeah.
We'll find him one day.
We're going to find it. And next week, I'm going to tell you the truth because I don't make a habit of lying. But Lucas Nemeth, he was third, like you said, in that first race out Keimer. Disappointed on the bounce back, but 17th in Kenya was great. And he's just been steady, right? Like he's built his career on being a steady golfer to this point. And now's probably the time for him to kick on. And this is the sort of event that you would expect him to do that. So, like you say, I think it's such a tough event to get right. I think I'm getting my excuses out early. I think it's a tough course to kind of handicap because I don't think there's an obvious path to victory. Like we think it's bombs away, but we don't know. It could be anything. It could get firm and fast for all we know, and run off and all sorts. But I think it is the right approach to take the guys that are just strong off the tee or lights out with their irons, which generally pays off most weeks. But yes, that was a long way of me saying that I like the Lucas Nemeth pick. Luke Jerling, who I guess that's how you say his name. I can't think of any other way to say his name. I would not be able to pick him out in a room full of one person. He was second last week on the Challenge Tour, and that was kind of enough for me to be surprised that he was 300 or 400 to 1. I know you said to proceed caution with those strokes gained data. So depending on how accurate that is, he was first in tee screen last week, first off the tee and 17th in approach. Generally seems pretty believable. Whether it's as many as I think it said something ridiculous, like he gained 6.6 strokes off the tee. So probably not true, but probably true that he was up there considering where he finished. When you look at his kind of career, he's done it at this level, right? He was second last week. He was third in the Cape Town Open last year, 2 top 5s before that on the Sunshine Tour as well. Another one, Vodacom Origins, he was third. So he's generally just been about. And I just thought that for someone that finished second last week, like we see these guys, like the exact thing that you picked up last week, Marcus Kinhult was like he won and third on the Nordic Golf League. And I know there's a lot more upside to someone of Marcus Kinhult, a lot more pedigree in what we know about him, but I'll just take a guy that's just finished second in an event down the road, now coming back to a course that hopefully he knows. As far as I can tell, hits it a decent way off the tee, and he's 300, 400 to 1. Yeah.
I don't blame you there. Was probably the favorite at one point on the back nine as well. So my final selection is Tristan Stridham. There's 2 Stridhams in the field this week, Aki Stridham and Tristan. So make sure you're on the correct one. Tristan has gone third last week. So he closed 65, 64, 68. And then he finished, I believe, 18th the week before. And I think it was 3 events prior to that, had another second place finish. So a golfer who at least has shown us life. Again, life on that tour. So second, 18th, 29th, 13th, second. His last 5 events, has not a victory in his OWGR career. 5 seconds over the last 3 years in 35 events. So pretty decent strike rate when it comes to that. 7 more top 10s last year in 2021. So literally in almost 50% of the events last year, he did finish inside the top 10. So you get the same type of conversation that you just talked about with your long shot. For another one, he was as long as 300 to 1 this morning on DraftKings, got sliced into 150 to 1. See them as short as 80. Our friend Bradley Todd's on too, so that always has a little impact. But I think it's worth taking some South Africa darts for those guys that are comfortable and in courses they're probably way more familiar with than a lot of this field.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it must have been the SA Open Championship, just looking back, that we were looking at Tristan Stridham before. And he missed the cut there, so we obviously didn't go. We didn't pick him anyway, but I think we talked about him. But Oki Stridham actually finished in the top 19 there. But they're guys that when you look on tour tips, you look at location form, you look at the course form. Generally, when they're events that have got limited course history, they tend to be there because they've just been around on the Sunshine and Big Easy tours, and they haven't really generally left South Africa. But like you say, it's just really lightly run. Like up until 2020s, most starts he'd made was 10, like 10 in 2019, 6 in 2018, 2 in 2017. Before that, and he had 4 top tens in 6 starts in 2018. Like, he's obviously a good player. Like, whether it's at the next level, probably not. But we're not at the next level. We've got a handful of guys that are. Why is Bernd Wiesberger here? I do not know. Does that mean that he's going to win? I don't know. There's very much a lot of I don't knows this week, and I'm sorry to the listeners that maybe think that we can dissect it a little bit more than that, but it's just such a hard event to do. And I think the best thing we can do, and the straightest way to talk about this event is just to say not to go too heavily on it. I don't think there's a lot of data there or a lot of history there for us to work with. And I think it's just take your guys that maybe wanted to bat. JC Ritchie was someone I was waiting for a bigger price to go on. Daniel Gavins is someone I always like. Wilco, we always love a reason to bat Wilco 9-8. And I've backed a guy that I've never seen play golf at 300 to 1. So, it's a light week. 2 guys that we didn't speak about, Brandon Stone and Sean Norris, are both like 50 and 60 to 1. Like, they're big prices for those pedigree guys. So any one of those guys below 100 to 1, you wouldn't be kind of like surprised if they won, because they're all better quality than most people they're playing here. It's just a really hard week to dissect.
So the advice I took from that is you're going all in on the 1,000 to 1 long shot, James Hart Dupreece, who is the longest golfer in the world. So if we didn't win on Robson Chinhoy last week, I thought when I woke up and he was under par on Thursday morning, I was like, oh my gosh, we're celebrating. T40, maybe T20. Unfortunately, the front 9 on Friday did us in. But yeah, Hart Dupreece finished top 10 at that same amateur event, and he's longer than Wilco. So no, that just was more reason to go into our narrative of Bombers will thrive this week. So let's run through our cards as we close out here. Tom, can you go back through it?
Yeah, so it's JC Ritchie for me. I think he's at 40, 45 to 1. Daniel Gavins and Wilco 9-8 are at the 60 to 1 range, and Luke Jerling at 300 or 400 to 1, whatever it is that you can get.
Perfect. I'm on Hurley Long, 75 to 1. Xander Lombard, 80. Christopher Broberg, 100. Thriston Lawrence, 110 to 1. Tom's joining me there. Lucas Nimitz at 150 to 1. And Tristan Stridham, 150 to 1. Thank you guys for listening to another week of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. If you prefer the audio version, always you can follow us on Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets of the Mix. Follow that on any of your podcast platforms. But we appreciate all you guys' support and wish you the best of luck on another week.